Alright guys, we're back with this question and we're now at solving the quadratic equation using the quadratic formula method. Remember again that when we're solving, we're finding the value or values of the unknown, and it's a quadratic equation, so you know that you're going to have two answers. So we're finding the values for the unknown using the quadratic formula method, which is going to be new for you. So let's get straight into it. So here is the quadratic formula. It looks a little bit cumbersome, but not to worry. After working with it a few times, it's going to be very easy. And also, what makes this good is that on paper 2, this is given on the formula sheet. So you don't even have to remember that. It will be given in the exam and you just look at it and use it. Now, I'm just going to point out 3 particular areas where students make errors in before we actually get into solving the quadratic equation. Just know that there's a minus here in the formula, and the plus and minus here is what is going to give us the two answers. And you have to be careful with inside here as well. When you're substituting values for A, B, and C, put them in bracket. That will help you a lot. So again, when you're putting in the values for A, B, and C, please to put them in bracket, because if you don't, in particular, in some cases, you're going to be wrong. So the minus is here, plus and minus is what is going to give us the two answers, and we're just going to be careful when we're working. Now, the only reason why we have x here is if x is the unknown that we're trying to find. But if it was an x inside of the equation, let's say this was, for example, p squared plus 4p plus 3, then the unknown would be p, and then the formula would begin with p. But because it's x in the quadratic equation, then the formula begins with x. So we're going to get straight into this now in solving this quadratic equation, which is x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. So we're going to get straight into that now. So we're solving this quadratic equation using the quadratic formula method. Now again, routine requires us to check to see if it is in this form. Always do that. And it is, so remember that there's a 1 here, that we should be able to easily identify the values of A, B, and C. So, the value of A is 1, the value of B is positive 4, and the value of C is positive 3. And you already knew this because when you did the factorization method, we figured it out. So again, the value of B is 4, AC means 1 times 3, which is 3, and the factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And we know that the two numbers that we're looking for to break up this middle piece here is actually 1 and 3. But because we're using the quadratic formula method, we really don't need to come here anymore. We really don't need to come there. So what we need to do is focus on the values of A, B, and C now. Now, all we need to do is find the value of A, B, and C in this. And then what we're going to do is, essentially, we're going to plug these values in here and determine what the values of x are. So that is essentially what we're about. So we're going to get the ball rolling with that. So I'm going to get here. So all we need to do is identify A, B, and C. We're going to use the quadratic formula method. So let's get straight into that. So the quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. The division sign is all over. It doesn't come here, but it goes from under the minus b, comes straight across. And all we're going to do now is plug in these values. It's as simple as that. And when you're putting them in, put them in brackets as well, because that's very important. So let's get straight into that. So x is going to be equal to, the value of b is positive 4. So remember it's minus 4 here. Plus or minus, very important, the square root of, and the value of b is 4. We're putting that in bracket, squared, minus 4 times, the value of a is 1. And the value of c is 3. All over 2 divided 2 times 1. So we're going to take our time and work this question. right? So there's to be no rush. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus. And also, when you're doing a question like this, put ample space between the steps, especially when you're working with fractions, in a sense, because you have numerator and denominator. And this is going to be 4 all squared is 16. And this part here, make sure you don't make any mistakes, because in some questions you're going to have minus signs in the bracket. So always cover this part and say minus 4 times 1 is minus 4, and minus 4 times 3 is negative 12. So always take your time when you're doing this part. Caution. Divided by 2 times 1 is 2. Nice. So we're going to have x equals minus 4 plus or minus 16 minus 12 is 4. And I just want to point out something very important here. This is a good indication that the equation could have been solved using factorization method. Because, if you have a number here that when you square root you get a whole number, in this particular case the square root of 4 is 2, then you know that it could have been factorized. Now, how you know that it couldn't have been solved using factorization method is if this number was, for example, 5 or 7 or 3, where if you square it, that you're going to get some decimal points. So this would tell you that this equation could not have been solved using factorization method. So this is an indication of that. But anyway, let's continue with the solution here. So it's all over 2, and we get into the final part of the solution. Very, very straightforward and very simple. Now, from here, x is equal to minus 4 plus and minus. Remember I said that the plus and minus is what's going to give us the 2 answers, and you're going to see that shortly. The square root of 4 is 2 all over 2. Very nice. And this is when now we're going to break off to get our 2 answers now. So when x is equal to minus 4, and we have plus and minus here, we're just going to choose plus in this case. And for the next case, we're going to choose a minus. X is equal to minus 4 minus 2 over 2. Now remember, when we had used factorization method, we got negative 3 and negative 1 for the answers. So in this particular case, we should get the same answers even though we're using a different method, which is quadratic formula method. So x will be equal to negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, which is one of the answers that we got with factorization method. This particular case, you owe 4 and you owe 2, you owe 6, and that is going to be negative 3. So this is using quadratic formula method to solve this equation here. Again, this is how we started off. This is the formula. X is here because we're finding the value of x. If it was another letter, we'd put a letter here. And this is the quadratic formula, right? The unknown equals this. Watch the minus here. The plus or minus is what's going to give us the 2 answers. The first thing you're going to do is identify. You're going to make sure that the equation is in the general form. 0 must always be on the right hand side. Identify A, B, and C. We don't need to do this part because we're not solving by factorization method. We just need to identify A, B, and C and plug them into the formula carefully. When you plug them in, ensure that you put the brackets. Okay, because without the brackets, if you have a negative number, for example, for B, you're going to run into problems. So put them in bracket, take your time and work it, and then you're going to end up here. And when you get to this stage, this is when you break off. Use a plus in one instance and the minus in another instance to get your 2 answers. And this is how we use the quadratic formula method to solve a quadratic equation. I hope you guys found this video insightful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.